So hello, Bill Riddle here. I'm here with Josh Hedberg.
Hello.
We're Bioag guys, and we're here to talk about integrated pest management. Just a little background. So I come from the commercial ag world. I was a certified pesticide applicator for 30 plus years. And Josh comes from the indoor garden, the indoor-outdoor cannabis garden world.
Yes.
Greenhouse world, right? And so IPM in big ag is a little bit different than indoor production often. And we're just here to talk a little bit about our experiences with IPM.
Absolutely.
And we're just here to understand more about IPM in Josh's world as I ask him questions and him in my world. So Josh, when you hear integrated pest management, what do you think of first thing?
Oh, first thing I think of is a schedule.
A schedule?
Yeah.
Okay.
Indoor gardening, greenhouse gardening, integrated pest management is all about, what to do, when to do it, and what time to do it. You start off when they root or when your seeds pop, and that's when it starts. And you do different things at each level of growth, and you got to do it every week, every month, every year. If it doesn't get done, that means you didn't do it because there's no bugs to come and help you. Eat the bad bugs that are there.
Right.
You are the squisher of bugs and the preventer of fungus,
right.
The bringer of light, the maker of water.
Right.
If you don't do it, it doesn't get done.
Right. And very unlike what we've gotten addicted to in commercial ag is you hang in there and do your thing and watch your crop, and then the problem appears and you go out there and nuke it with the best chemistry you've got.
Yeah, the wait until it's a problem thing,
Yeah.
I mean, so many, particularly with bad bugs like spider mites and aphids and ones that can actually end a crop. That's the other thing indoors is when you get one of these problems, they can proliferate so fast. I mean, it's the difference between an indoor garden and an indoor bug growing situation is this. Very, very small, and you can make an environment that loves to grow bugs just as much as it loves to grow plants. It's just about making it not appealing for them while it's appealing for the plants.
Right.
Be it that, having slightly colder nights or having more fans in your room so leaves are rustling and wind is there so they don't like to lay their eggs. All those little things that you can do, indoors that you really can't do outdoors. But you've got wind and you've got, natural beneficial bugs that, we don't get.
Right. Let's stay with that thought. It's I think you're starting to head toward like cultural practices.
Yeah.
So, in the field, you're looking at, you're kind of in control of timing, sprays and planting and when you feed things. Just one example would be IPM in winter wheat. For example, there's here in the Willamette Valley, October 15 planting deadline. So don't plant before that because aphids that are carrying barley yellow dwarf virus will show up with these late aphid flights. So if you can avoid planting any earlier than that, you're good to go. Of course, we're in a tough spot here in the valley because then that's about the time the rains come. But that's an example of cultural practice to avoid a disease vector, an aphid flight, late aphid flight.
Yeah, like in an indoor garden, the problem that we have is if you find ants in your garden. I found this in my personal indoor garden once when I was a medical marijuana grower. I still am. I have been for more than 15 years. That I had sugar ants. Didn't think much of them. They're just ants. I just put out a couple of traps. Didn't really think about it. And then about 3 weeks into my flowering cycle, I'm like, what the hell are those ants doing on my plant? And I'm like, and what are these little green things? I'm like, oh, those are aphids. Then they're like, oh, you need to release ladybugs because you can't spray because you're in flowering. I'm like, okay, I'll release a bunch of ladybugs. The ants are killing the ladybugs. They protect the aphids. You know,
because
so
the aphids are making the sugars
that they're feeding on,
right
that they're
on.
taking, and it's pure sugar.
Yeah.
You know, in fact, it's wonderful sugar that came from a cannabis plant.
Right.
You know, so they probably love it to death. You know, I certainly like everything that comes from my plants. Yeah, that was a hard lesson. You know, I had to, you know, pay a guy to spray the outside of my house, and it solved the problem I had inside of my house.
Okay.
You know, so what happens outside your garden is absolutely going to happen inside. If you live around a bunch of oak trees, you're going to have powdery mildew problems. You're going to have some fungus issues.
Right.
You know, if you live out in the valley with the fields, you know, what's going on in those fields is going to happen in your garden. If you walk inside and outside, if you got a dog, if you got a cat, you know, they're going to bring those indoors.
Right.
You know, you got to keep those rooms separate. You got to have a way to have a clean room in between your space and the garden space.
Right,
you
and
know?
that's kind of a cultural practice.
Oh, yeah.
Like I just know this stuff from Josh. You got your clone room and your production room, and you've got your mother plants here.
Yep.
And if they're all in the same facility,
that can be no bueno, you know, especially with, you know, when you're harvesting marijuana. The problems from the last crop can absolutely come over to this crop. So it's the order that you work. You always work with, you know, the finished product or the flowering plants last. You always work with the cuttings first, you know, and moms you deal with, you know, those usually either the very last thing, because they're the oldest plants in the room. So if there's a problem, most likely it's going to be there, you know, or you make those the absolute first thing. But, you know, whatever happens there is happening consistently on a schedule every time, you know, just so you can keep those plants as happy and healthy as you can, you know. But you know, a lot of people like to do cuttings of cuttings, you know, where they'll not have a mother room and they'll just take a cutting off of this batch of plants once they reach a certain height. That's even more important that you keep your IPM in check, because every time you get a major bug infestation, those plants wilt, they get stress. You know, with the hybridized plants that are out there in the cannabis industry, you lose a little bit of vigor, you lose a little bit of goodness. Some, you know, plants are like people. Some are very tough and some are very much not. Right. You know, you just got to roll the dice and see how it works out. You know, and a lot of the time, the best plants are not the toughest plants.
Right, right. And then you move in, start thinking about, most of the time we talk about IPM, we're talking about insects, right? And understanding not just a big part of IPM is also managing beneficials.
Yes.
So, you know, we talk about the bug, we talk about the enemy, but understanding the beneficial, the predator insects is really important.
Yeah, and outside you can, from what I understand, there's all sorts of stuff you can do to entice the beneficial bugs to come to your field.
Right. I mean, there's,
you know, whereas I got to go buy them by the satchel.
Right, right. And one example of that would be like in the hop yard, you know, two-spotted spider mites are a problem. They can be a big problem. They can be a crop killer, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
But, you know, what they found was, you know, you find mites early in the season, you leave them alone. You know, it used to be you'd go out and say, oh, saw mites, gonna go spray them, and throw whatever chemistry you can at them. But what they found is you let that early group go and just hang in there. And meanwhile, your predator populations start building. And by the end of the season, they've kind of kept up with the two spots, and maybe you won't even have to spray in the fall. Or in the summer, midsummer, like pre-harvest. But that's one example of understanding, you know, the predators. And encouraging them. Along the same lines, you know, they've learned about nutrition, big loads of nitrogen. So you have your nitrogen budget for that crop in the hop yard. If you can split it up and spread it through the season, through the growing season, you don't have this huge flush of lush growth early, because that's what the mites just come running for. And so if you can kind of spread that out, you don't have this really lush, high nitrate plant that they can smell from miles away. So anyway, that's just a couple examples of, you know,
with
knowing your predators.
Particularly with greenhouse cultivation, you know, they use a lot, you know, we've used a lot of ladybugs. You know, they've been a very popular beneficial bug from the past. You know, but there's a lot of little tricks you got to do to, you know, get them to stay around. It's all about getting them to nest. You know, because it's the little ladybugs that make the big difference, not the big ones. Those are the ones that will take care of the problem for you. The big ladybugs, they'll do a little bit, but they're not going to do what those little ones do. You know, but you know, with most indoor cultivation, you got the problem of having a light. You know, and they see the light, they fly right to it, they burn themselves to death, and they're dead. You know, with LEDs, it's not as bad, but it's still a problem. You know, so what you do is you take soda water, you take 50-50 soda and water, and you spray your ladybugs as you're releasing them. You know, put them on this plant and that makes the wings, you know, glued together for a short period of time, 24, 48 hours.
Okay.
But you also need to spray your plants with water because they're going to be really thirsty from the trip. You know, so if there's water there and they can't fly away, they're twice as likely to lay eggs and stick around if there's food for them to eat. But if you're just releasing them willy-nilly on a regular basis, they're probably not going to stick around.
Right. Right. You know, the predatory beneficials that you see. So I learned something new the other day about Persimilis mites that are actually predator mites on two spots. That they've been using them for a while, but they've now found this feed medium that they raise the Persimilis in, and then when you release them, they're like 3 times as athletic and effective as
that's awesome.
a normal predator.
Oh, that's great.
Saw some really cool research about, you know, turning the medium fed group loose here, you know, branch full of 2 spots.
Yep.
Turn the normal guys loose here, and the specially fed Persimilis, they covered 3/4 of the branch, and they were marching on before these guys ever got moving.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I mean, that's one example of a very effective, beneficial. Yeah.
Yeah, the other one that we used most often, and definitely was the most common indoors, was predator nematodes. You know, because indoor fungus gnats and root aphids, you know, they can become a serious problem. And now with other types of invasive species, like, I can't remember if it was broad mites or russet mites, but one of those two lives part of its life in the top of the soil, you know, and then crawls up the plant. And, you know, that's a problem. You know, any bug that's got those 2 different programs, it's like that whack-a-mole game. You kill all the ones in the soil, these are laying eggs. You kill all these, there's more coming out of the soil. You know, you got to get them both at the same time. You know, and very rarely is there any sort, like, you know, there's very rarely a good insecticide that you can do both with without paying a terrible cost. You know, there is no biological free ride when it comes to chemicals.
No.
You're always going to pay a price of some kind.
Yeah.
You know, there is no perfect spray, and you know, there is, you know, I'd love to see it, you know, but I have yet to see it. You know, there's always a price to be paid when you have to spray a chemical on a regular basis. Right. Which I'd much rather, you know, where beneficial bugs have, you know, beneficial sprays that make my plants stronger. You know, like biostimulants. You know, using different things in my soil that make my soil more resistant against bugs, diatomaceous earth, stuff like that. You know, than using all the, you know, a chemical every other Tuesday, or you know, or a prill over my soil that makes sure nothing ever grows there. You know, I don't know what the long-term effects of that, and I eat most everything I grow. Right. You know, so I don't, you know, that's nothing I want to have any part of.
Right. We're kind of coming around full circle to plant health and resilience, and how, you know, plants that are stronger, they have the ability to resist a lot of these attacks by insects in particular. But yeah, I think that's probably a pretty good place to stop right there.
Yeah, I think so.
We can talk about fungal problems. We can talk about you know, things like that down the road. But
yes, that's more of a fall issue.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, and that's the other thing, you know, with indoor gardens, just like that. Every time the seasons change, you're dealing, you know, in spring you trade the fungus for the bugs, and in fall you trade back again.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, that's just how indoor gardening works.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank you, Josh.
Yeah, thank you, Bill.